a lot about testing as expected. The tester almost has to become a customer face of the customer, and that's a huge transition that I think in my previous organization and this organization we were trying to grapple with. Right? We try to do too many things, but at the same time, that 80-20 rule what Barish was talking about is exactly the point that 80% of our customers really use 20% of our features. Right?
Sure.
And how do you critically find that 20% and make sure that delivery happens in the right way? So I see that role changing from the perspective.
Thank you. So I think we'll open it up for question. Maybe we can take 4 of question. Anybody, you can just raise your hand and first question there.
During your presentation, you mentioned about dev and testers working together on the automation part. Could you shed some light on that, please?
Done by developers. Am I right? So the very first test scripts come from developers. So what happens then? They may not continue these efforts. Generally, they come to us, for example, in my situation, they told us, okay, we have a development team, we have a testing team. Our testing team is generally doing manual testing, so they don't have the required skills, technical skills to do automation. That's why we ask our developers to do test automation. We have about 70 scripts, but we cannot maintain them. So we bring it to some point, then the focus dropped and we lose our attention on the point. So what can we do? They ask. We said, okay, these developers should be kept into the picture, but you need to have a distinct team who is capable of developing test scripts. So if you ask me, test automation is a technical activity and needs to be done by test automators, not by developers or manual testers. Okay, currently there are technologies like behavior-driven development, for example. You have the test cases like the, how can I say, is like a story. You write it in regular story format, then it's automated. But for me, it's not automation. The automation side of it is to do the back-end work, like to define all the object definitions for those stories to come through. So there needs to do some kind of hand coding. And also, automation, if you ask me, doing like record and playback stuff is like playing a game, is a test automation game for me. So it's not that a powerful tool to rely on. You need to do hand coding. So you need to do hand coding to set verification points, to go to the database, check something if it's broken. You don't do it on the user interface layer only. You need to do all those stuff. So some people, they told that test automation is a development activity. From some perspective it's true, but it's not a development activity. It is a testing activity because test automation should rely on solid test design. So first, you need to have a good manual testing in place. You need to have good test cases, good manual test cases, then you build automation on it. So from my perspective, I say that test automation is for the betterment of manual testing, can be used for, not in replacement. Okay, some areas like data management, for example, cannot be done by hand. Some protocols, some network protocols cannot be tested with an eye, should be automated fully. But to tell you the truth, whether you have a very solid test automation set, you need to do some kind of manual testing. This is the last words maybe I would do. Maybe in future we will see some other things, but currently the baseline is manual testing from my perspective.
Maybe, I think we can keep the answers also quick, it will be good. Yeah.
Is actually a combination of both testing and development. I mean, if we think of it. But when we are grooming a team or when I'm managing a team of test automators, I'll have to give them the perspective of development because they are developing a framework. Plus, they'll have to take care of the testing mindset. And there is specific automation activities like object identification, which is a different entity altogether. So they will have to have all these skills together and mindset together. So at times I find it challenging to make it understand the team members that you'll have to know all of these. So how do I mentor in such cases?
Okay, so your question is, how do you bring different perspectives, right? Is that what you're trying to ask? How do you bring your different perspectives in terms of balancing need for a framework?
She asked test automator should be a very powerful role, including all the technical skills, soft skills, testing concepts, how you can sustain it, how you can achieve to that point.
I think it's, you're right, you need multidimensional people, right? So what we do need is a lot of upskilling, a lot of constant education, right? Give them that perspective. In my previous organization, at least, there were a lot of testers, including, has moved from a development perspective. So I don't think you need to really isolate the testing team, right? We should keep it open, let ideas flow in from different perspectives, right? And at the same time, the other thing which I find it a little difficult, and one of the things that I try to do is that developers, from a perspective, especially because of the challenge I talked about, faster delivery and stuff like that, they become very siloed out at this point of time. I just know this module, I just need to work on this module because I need to deliver it in next 2 weeks, right? Whereas the testing team, right, it's almost like a T model, right? The depth versus the breadth, the breadth versus the depth, right? So from that perspective, I don't think either a developer completely or a tester completely can do the justice. So it's always the intermediation that you have to think about, right? Consciously bring in people who can think on multidimensional, and one of the things we have been doing is when we try to hire people, we try to look at those kind of skills. It's not only that you know a Selenium or a Java tool and that's about it. So it's a lot of hiring, it's a lot of education, a lot of exposure, right, to bring that perspective. And at the same time, I think the collaboration with the teams or with the development and your business analysts and things like that is becoming a lot more, I have seen in the last 7 and 8 years. That has been changing quite a lot as well.
Thank you. Maybe...
Sorry, can I just comment on that really briefly?
Yeah.
Just really. I think the whole thing going back to the coaching of the tester mindset, and one of the things is how do you teach something like critical thinking to someone who's a developer or someone who's technical? And I think there's a huge area there that can be explored, is helping people build up on skill, helping people to become able to understand, ask themselves critically, how do I know something is a problem? And what do you mean by something? These are the types of questions that testers naturally ask, but they can be taught to other people. And I think it's exploring how can you teach that type of skill. It's by giving people tasks and then helping them give feedback in order to help them identify how to think like that. So you say to them, okay, find 3 bugs in this system. And then they'll maybe find 1, and then you go back and you say, okay, well, what were you thinking when you found that 1 bug? What did you do? And then you go through their thought process and help them identify the types of thinking that they were doing through that exercise. And then you can help them understand gradually what it means to be using those types of thinkings in their real life work.
Questions, actually, we'll cover that. Quickly wanted to cover the area that we also wanted to talk about is the automation that you're seeing in the industry, and then how is testing going to play a role in this, the robotics, the cognitive, what you're seeing. I think it would be good to get a quick perspective from each of you, and as part of that also the role that testing would play in this one. In fact, usage of this in testing as well. Can you use AI, machine learning in testing as well? I think it will be good to get a quick perspective, and then we will open it up for maybe 4 questions or so. Okay, please.
So nowadays we are hearing those words IoT, big data, mobility, and so on. I'm a little bit bored of those, but okay, world is evolving to a point. Like currently, we have, for example, with mobile devices, we have the touch experience. So we use it with with touch control. From now on, it will be voice. So the very first applications coming up, like Siri, for example. When we first saw Siri, it was like, in Turkey generally, people, when they are testing Siri, they are swearing at it. If he can give you a good response, they tell you that, okay, it is really intelligent. This is not, of course, this is not you need to do. This is not a good thing, but okay, nowadays, with, for example, Amazon Echo and so on, really we believe in that this voice control is taking over the picture. So, and for example, I have Echo in my place, in my apartment, and it is like when I enter the room, she is like, okay, how are you? Do you want me to play music? I said, why not? What about the thing that you listened last time? Okay. And by the way, it's a black box listening to you all the time. I'm a little bit afraid, by the way. We are arguing with my wife and so on, so it's capturing everything and silent. Maybe one day she will come up with different things, I don't know, but she's really smart. So we will switch to a world like that. So maybe we will not have user interfaces, even user interfaces, yeah? Currently, maybe most of the testing activities are happening on the user interfaces, but maybe in 10 years' time, we don't have those. So what will happen? Yeah, of course, test automation is playing a vital role here. Currently, we say that, okay, we do automation and it is an important thing, but cannot be proven across all the industries. Am I right? So you all say that we do it, but when I ask you the return, I think you are not sure of the return it brings, and you can say today that, okay, we can replace it with manual testing. But in near future, with those kind of technologies, you cannot say that, okay, we do manual testing for this and just forget about automation. So automation will play a more vital role in the area. So you will not neglect it anymore. So this is my perspective.
Yeah, I'm already seeing, there's a company called Zero, it's accounting software based in New Zealand. They're using machine learning in their test data. So they put their test data together and it basically starts learning about what's good test data, what's not good test data. So there's an example already that's happening. There's teams that are actually experimenting with a lot of this stuff. So also I'm looking at I listened to a talk by Nicholas Carr on automation. He wrote The Glass Cage, I think. It was The Glass Cage or The Glass Room, something like that. And he basically talks about how it's wonderful to automate everything, but people are starting to recognize that we actually need to have some element of human interaction within the automation cycle. So, the typical story about, the husband and wife, because I was the wife, where we driving in Italy, and we went to Perugia, and we ended up driving down the back street in the middle of this medieval town with a road just basically just big enough to take the car, and it was a one-way street. We had 2 kids in the back, and we were absolutely petrified. But we went that way because the GPS told us to. We blindly followed it. And he said there's a huge danger when we hand over all our thinking. We seem to have a desire to hand over all our thinking to a machine. And he said there's actually quite a danger in that because people are starting to go and lose lives because of that. So he said he predicts that in the future people will be introducing ways to incorporate cognitive thinking into the automation process so that we don't lose that ability to, I guess, keep aware of what's going on instead of handing it all over to machines.
I don't think we really need to scary or have some kind of fear in our mind like this will impact our jobs or something like that. However, definitely we need to look at updating ourselves as an individual or as an organization. We need to look at how do we, update our skill sets. Automation is happening everywhere, not only in IT industry. Just for an example, if you take it, the ATM has been, when the ATM is launched in the banking sector, everybody thought that like a lot of people will lose their jobs. But actually it has reduced the cost and opened up, and in fact they could able to open up a lot of other branches, and actually the employment has become more. So my opinion, we don't need to actually worry about this one, really upgrade our skill set, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so from my perspective, I had a similar experience as that. So I was driving in Germany first or second time, right, didn't know the roads, depending on GPS, and we went somewhere and we had to come back, it almost started raining, we said, okay, take us to the shortest way. So we drove, and then finally it took us inside a ferry, right? We went inside the ferry, and then the ferry starts moving, GPS says, if possible, take a U-turn. Whether we can do a U-turn inside a ferry. So that's exactly the point. Sometimes we completely forget or start not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right, so that's this, but as a company, I think we are a supply chain software company. We started thinking about IoT, we started thinking about machine learning, right? Yeah. Probably the need was a lot lesser at this point, but definitely we are on that path, right? So we still have to make some experiments and see how this goes on. We do see good use cases, but obviously we have not done a lot in that space. However, from a testing space, right, I think I see a lot of opportunity to use AI, right? I talked about we became an agile shop, and the head of R&D, global head of R&D, right, made it a mandate that we need to do X amount of automation and stuff like that. Way back in 2012, we started working on our agile journey. And he kind of called it Wild Wild West, right? You need to do some automation. Which tool, doesn't matter, but get into that habit, right? So over a period of time, we built up, and Raghavendra and Anil from that team is here, right? And we built up a repository of 50,000, 60,000 test cases, and I'll give you some numbers. We run those 50,000 test cases twice daily, all right? 4 stacks, 4 releases, right? If you do the maths, it is around 1.6 million test cases running every day. 1.6 million every day, and if you multiply it through 65, you'll see around 580 million. Numbers look really good, but again, what is the ROI? How many defects did you find, right? So doing automation is one, but getting the value out of it, something that we really have to question. Now, when we started thinking a little about AI, and this is an experiment we're trying to do, this data, this execution data lying with us for the last 4-5 years is a huge repository of information which we're probably not leveraging. So as next step, we're trying to do some predictive analysis on this, very early stages. What does this pattern say? This area of code doesn't break. This area of code breaks a lot of time. When this kind of changes come in, this area of code breaks, right? Even though we did not find issues, our customers are finding issues in that area. So it's going to tell us a lot of information, and that's where I think as a test organization, we will be able to leverage those patterns and concepts to become a lot more smarter. I talked about it, we need to become a lot more smarter in our testing approaches. I sincerely believe that this would help us a lot in that direction.
Using of AI in testing.
Yes, right. So that is something that we are experimenting with.
Good. I think, I know we might have run out of time, but testing always gets an additional time, actually in development. So maybe we take another 5 minutes to maybe some press. Yeah. Okay. Finally, the budget remains the same. No? Okay. So maybe we take 4 questions, and I think Rahul had a question. Rahul has been answered by them. Then don't ask the question. But otherwise, you.
So this is 2017 when we are asking this question: software testing in the world of automation. Let's go back maybe 5 years in time. And then maybe again another 5 years in time. My worry is that neither the question has changed nor the answers. We're talking the same things. No need to worry. UI automation, like 2003, I think, Windrunner, and then later replaced. Those days I'm talking about. Since then, industry moved forward, microservices, web services layer, but today, as Barish mentioned, it is still UI layer. So when, as an industry, we are not even ready to change our ways of working and keep conducting conferences about next gen, how is the situation going to improve? So if you could address that, because I see the same answers, which I could have found like 5 years back. And maybe 5 years from there also. There's no new answer today. It's the same question nagging us without any solution, at least in the near sight.
Yeah, in the last few years, the automation concept. So any take on it actually, in the sense that right now the whole hype is about automation, role of testing and around that. But this fundamentally was sometime back when basic systems were getting automated. Now bots have come in. So have the issues broadly changed, and what is the context from there? Any viewpoint?
So maybe I give a shot, and this is my own perspective. I think, yes, Rahul, you're right. The issues have not changed. The answers probably also have not changed a lot. So has the developers not, right? The moment they code, they still inject bugs, right? Now they inject the bugs in a very interesting way. Now you have microservices, so I inject a bug here, I inject a bug here, and both of them don't accept it is their bug, it is that problem, that one. So from my perspective, I think it's not that the industry has not moved. I personally have seen from where I have started as a in the testing industry to the practices that we talk about. Sometimes we probably get too driven by this agile and things to shift left if you do testing before we do coding, do TDD and things like that, right? I think we'll solve all the problems. But from my perspective, I think there needs to be a balance, right? As long as the developers are injecting bugs, right, there would be need for testers. And unless we find a silver bullet for them not to do it, we still need to have those practices. However, the way it's done, the smartness, the faster, the thinking process have changed from my perspective. We talked about a few examples and I have a few more. My problem with automation also always has been, right, if you write automation, it will always go through the same lines of code until you vary the data at the runtime, right? Chances are that when you do automation at the beginning of a project, the way your product has evolved, right, you probably will not find a lot of bugs anyways in that part of the code, right? So how do you keep refreshing? Because every 5 years technology changes, every 5 years the automation process also has to change, right? And I do see changes. We have moved on from this record and replay to data driven to dynamic, and we are trying a concept of dynamically generating data at the runtime exactly the way our customers would probably do, simulating scenarios which our customers probably will do. So I think from my perspective we are moving. If it is that pace which we wanted to, maybe not, but I don't completely agree with you that we have not moved on. That's my perspective.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I think there was one. Yeah, please.
Anyway, this is to supplement what Rahul said about 2003. Having been under how disruption and automation is going to supplement each other. On that context, I just want to know, as a tester community, what do you think the two major, not about the need of digitalization, but what would be the two major challenges we have in this digital era for the tester community? And the supplement question is, how do you perceive testers' role in building a new digital era?
Okay. I think it, and then maybe we will come to us as the final one. So, but I think this, she is very close to us, and so I think please, your question, you can you give the mic here?